Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K17. My name is Pete and today we complete the first year of NBA 2K17's MyGM or MyLeague mode with the Portland Trail Blazers. The Trail Blazers are one of those teams that's stuck in the middle a bit. They are good enough to make the playoffs consistently, and the backcourt duo of Damian, Lillard and McCollum is on many nights capable of pushing them to a win. However, the team lacks a strong supporting cast. Jusuf Nurkic down low could develop into their first option in the paint. Right now though, the Blazers have to rely heavily on Lillard and McCollum, who on their own will probably not be able to bring a ring to Portland. But let's have a more detailed look, and for that we can jump into our situation overview. And we start things off with the star in Portland, with Damian Lillard. He is your first option offensively, he can score, he can distribute, basically a lot of the offense will run through him. Expect him to play heavy minutes, not only because of his talent, but also because his backups are somewhat lackluster. Shabazz Napier will likely not make a huge leap anytime soon, and while he is passable as a backup point guard, the Blazers could definitely use an upgrade. Tim Quarterman is only 21 years old, so he does have some time to develop, however he has a long way to go before he can see consistent minutes. McCollum will then be your starter at the shooting guard, and combined with Lillard he will form one of the most dangerous backcourts in the league. At least offensively, since both of them are not the greatest defenders in 2K. Compared to Lillard, McCollum has a slightly better backup situation with CRABBE, who is serviceable in his role as a sharpshooter off the bench. If you look at his contract though, you might be somewhat less comfortable with him. Pat Connaughton is your third option at the shooting guard, but apart from being more athletic, he doesn't offer much that CRABBE doesn't already bring to the table. At the small forward, you realistically have 2, maybe even 3 viable options for the starting spot. Mo Harkless can give you some much needed defense, especially on the perimeter, while Evan Turner is more offensive minded with a focus on playmaking, which is somewhat unusual for a small forward. It is also the reason why point guard is his secondary position, which is something I think we should make note of. Now, if you want to, Amino would also be an option here, although he is slightly lower rated than the other two. His focus is more or less exclusively on defense, both inside and outside, but he's also able to hit the occasional open shot. Behind those 3 guys, it is probably safe to assume that Jake Layman won't see minutes anytime soon. We move down low, and the power forward is likely the weakest position at the moment. Both Noah Vonleh and Myers Leonard are young talents, no doubt, but neither one of them should start on a playoff team. Vonleh is most of all an excellent rebounder with a solid mid-range shot, while Leonard has a bit more range and size, but lacks inside scoring skills. Those weaknesses at the power forward can however be absorbed by your centers, since both Jusuf Nurkic and Festus Ezeli are able to switch to the power forward. They actually have slightly higher ratings there, but not enough to warrant a full-time switch. It does make sense however to start both of them alongside each other, that way you get the best out of your front-court rotation. Ed Davis can then be in the backup rotation with one or both of your power forwards, although his skill set is very similar to that of Noah Vonleh, so playing them both at the same time might cause you some problems down low. Up next, the expiring contracts, and would you look at that, the Trailblazers are actually the first team in the series that does not have a single expiring contract on their roster, and I believe that makes long-term planning a lot easier. Now, what they do have are a couple of team options, specifically on your 2 best big men, Nurkic and Ezeli, but also on the potentially important role players Noah Vonleh and Shabazz Napier. Connaughton and Quarterman also have a small option each, but they would be prime targets to let go if you want to make room for a free agent. That whole free agency thing might turn out to be a bit more difficult than expected though, as the Blazers' cap space situation actually worsens from this to the next season. The main factor here is McCollum's contract extension kicking in, but the large contracts on CRABBE and Evan Turner are certainly not helping either. Now, since it is somewhat questionable whether or not you will be able to acquire a good free agent, let us look at draft picks instead. And 2017 might just be Portland's year in the draft. With 3 first-round picks in total, the Blazers could potentially grab themselves a nice group of young players. Now, it has to be noted that the Grizzlies pick is protected, although it is unlikely to actually fall into the top 5. Additionally, both the Trailblazers and the Cavaliers, whose pick you also own, are likely to finish among the better teams in the league, which in turn would of course equal lower positions in the draft. Still, with 3 first-rounders on hand, you have a lot of assets that you can use, either in the draft itself or in trades. But before we get into the trades and moves, it is time to ask our 3 key questions that need to be answered before going into year 1 with the Blazers. Question number 1. Are you willing to pay both CRABBE and Turner? This is by far the most obvious one, as the two of them earn a combined $35 million this season, tendency increasing. Both of them will likely come off the bench, and it would be absolutely justified to see them as the first trade candidates if you want to save some money. Question number 2. How attached are you to your draft picks? Maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 times, 2K's draft classes are getting extremely weak when it comes to the mid-late first round. And that is where potentially all 3 of your first round picks could land. So you have a real chance of being able, or better of being forced, to pick 3 guys with a rating around 70 and passable potential. That in itself isn't the greatest problem, but with Lillard and McCollum in their prime years, you might not want to wait a few more years for young guys to develop. Also keep in mind that in order to add 3 rookies to the team, you would need to part ways with 3 guys by the end of the season, and considering the quality of those rookies, that could be a hard decision. On the other hand though, if your draft class is fairly deep and you scout the right players, and if you have a bit of luck, you might just be able to land a few steals. And question number 3, do you see either Harkless, Turner or Aminu as a long-term starting caliber small forward? While your power forward can be covered by your centers, at the small forward you are stuck with what you have. And what you have is definitely solid, but still a good tier below your 2 stars at the point and shooting guard. Harkless is most likely going to develop for a while longer and turn into a high 70s, maybe even 80 overall player, but who knows, maybe you want something better. Chances are neither Turner nor Aminu are going to be the solution to that problem, which inevitably leaves you looking elsewhere. Now, I think it goes without saying that Lillard and McCollum are not on the trade block, but I would personally extend that list to at least Yusuf Nurkic as well, simply because of the nice combination of age, talent and contract that he brings with him. The rest of the team, while also fairly young and talented, is definitely not irreplaceable, especially when the right offer comes along. And that right offer might just be this one right here. In our very first move, we are going to trade Evan Turner and maybe also some picks for either an expiring contract or a young player. The reason for this is pretty obvious. Turner is simply not worth his money. Turner will get paid $70 million for 4 years, and that might just be one of the worst contracts in the league right now, at least in 2K. Also, for those of you who care about such a thing, getting rid of Turner for someone cheap or expiring will most likely also avoid the luxury tax next season. Additionally, the small forward spot is crowded with 3 capable players, so losing one of them won't hurt us that much. And combined with a pick of your choice, we can definitely do better. On the expiring contract side, I can offer you Turner for Thiago Splitter, although that is certainly nothing spectacular. The Magic are probably willing to agree to a straight-up trade of Turner for the expiring Jeff Green, and that is actually a sensible move for both sides. The Magic would fill the hole that Green's departure and free agency would leave, although at a steep price, while we get $17 million off the books for next season. If you're looking to only save some cash, I would personally pull the trigger here. Alternatively, if you're looking to acquire a player for the future, may I direct your attention to the Brooklyn Nets. For Turner, the Cavaliers' first-rounder and Tim Quarterman, the Nets are usually willing to part ways with 2 of their young and talented guards. While I think that giving away 2 is a bit much for them, they are an excellent and also a realistic trade partner here, as I imagine they are very willing to accept an offer that includes a first-round pick. What I eventually went with was this, Turner and the unprotected first-rounder from Cleveland for Sean Kilpatrick. I couldn't decide for a long while whether or not this was a fair trade, but then I thought, well, Kilpatrick is already 26 years old and Brooklyn really needs a pick, so in the end I could convince myself. With Kilpatrick, we now have a nice shooting guard on the team, and that is the perfect base for move number 2. Up next, we're going to trade Allen CRABBE. He basically serves his purpose as long as you have no other option. Once a comparable player comes along, CRABBE's contract is likely going to look very bad. In my case, Kilpatrick earns a fraction of CRABBE's salary for the next 2 years, and it really makes no sense to keep both of them around. If you made your first move like I did, then you can once again target either an expiring contract or a young player. A good position would be the point guard, since you are a bit weak on the bench here. But if you did not acquire a shooting guard in your first move, then it makes sense to go for one here. The Nets should once again be a willing trade partner. Now, if you did not grab a shooting guard in move number 1 and you also don't want to grab one here, then it actually makes sense to keep CRABBE around because you simply need some depth. If you go for the trade, then you could for example bring in Jared Bayless from the Sixers. The Sixers are able to pay CRABBE's salary, and while you do pick up a rather large one yourself, Bayless is likely a more serviceable backup player than Napier. If you want to go for another highly paid player, Brandon Knight from Phoenix might make sense. He is stuck in the rotation behind 2 other players on the Suns and could at least somewhat live up to his salary as the go-to backup behind Lillard. Since Knight can play both the point guard and the shooting guard position, he's a very versatile trade target here and could also be acquired if you did not grab yourself a shooting guard in move number 1. For this trade to work, you will likely have to package in at least a second rounder though. If you want to acquire a true shooting guard and are not convinced by Knight, then you could now do business with the Nets and grab either Kilpatrick or one of his backups. Alternatively, the Sixers could give you 1 year of Gerald Henderson, which is a good idea if you plan to go shopping in free agency. In the end though, I felt like helping the Suns out with Knight and traded CRABBE a lottery-protected first and the second rounder for the combo guard from Phoenix. This gets us a good backup guard for both positions, while still reducing our overall payroll for the next 4 years by more than $23 million. And that brings us to the third and final move: skip ahead to the offseason. I don't want to go overboard with the trades, and since we don't have any contracts to extend, we can jump right ahead to draft day. Depending on the moves you made, you should now have somewhere between 0 and 3 draft picks, and with the highest one, I would personally target either a point guard, unless of course you traded for one, or a power forward, again unless you traded for one. If you made no trades involving your picks, it is absolutely possible to grab yourself 3 low 70s players here, although you can also end up with absolute garbage. So make sure to scout your draft class ahead of time. Another interesting point are the team options, especially since you have a few things to consider. Next to the usual "is this player worth his money?", you also have to look at how many rookies you just signed and maybe decline 1 or more options as a result. And like I said earlier, both Connaughton and Quarterman are the prime targets here. If you made moves that resulted in you having some cap space now and you decide you want to go after a free agent, you maybe need to free up an additional spot. If those 2 points are clear for you, then we can have a look at the players themselves. I think Nurkic is a lock to bring back, but the rest is up for discussion. Ezeli is a bit more expensive, although I would personally accept this option. The same goes for Vonleh. For 2 players of their caliber, you will very likely have to pay a lot more in free agency. If you were able to acquire a replacement for Napier already, then he could be declined, although his salary is still barely noticeable. If you followed my moves and grabbed Kilpatrick, he is another no-brainer for only $1 million. Quarterman I think can be safely declined. For Connaughton it depends on his development and on how many roster spots you need to free up. Now you are very likely entering free agency already above the cap, even if you traded both CRABBE and Turner. If you have some money to spare, feel free to fill any hole you might have, but generally don't expect to land a big-name free agent. With a strengthened bench and maybe some young talent from the draft, you can now enter your second year in Portland. All in all, I think Portland is the perfect beginner team in MyGM. Of course, that doesn't mean the Blazers don't offer a challenge, but the lack of expiring contracts and the large number of draft picks definitely make things a bit less chaotic. On top of that, the truly bad contracts on Turner and CRABBE are easily noticeable. You also won't have to bother with free agency too much in the first year, and your core is still young enough so that you have a bit of time before it's now or never mode. Despite all that, taking the Blazers to that next level will be a tough challenge. One more true star sure couldn't hurt, but the team already has a lot of money committed, and as we all know, superstars don't come cheap. However, with the moves outlined in this video, I still think you can put yourself in a nice position and continually improve the team. From here on out, all the best of luck. And that's it from my part. As always, leave a thumbs up if you like this video and feel free to check out the rest of the series. The playlist is linked on the top left of your screen. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!